Pickling is hands down one of the coolest techniques out there. It's easy to do, it helps bring a lot of flavor to whatever it is you're pickling, and of course, it can help preserve the shelf life. Now, it's said to be over 4,000 years old, but you have to go all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia, where they would add produce to an acidic brine to help make it last longer. That is it. Now, for me, the fruits of my labor are starting to pay off because I've got a garden that is ready to be harvested. However, I've got to get out there first and see what we've got. Sound good? Let's pick. I have to admit, I'm super proud of where this garden's at, and a huge ups to my parents for helping make this happen. Is it perfect? By no means, but it's my first year and I'm very satisfied with everything that we've got. Now, what I want to do is pick some carrots, some green beans, probably some beets, and I've got one surprise one that I don't have, but it's awesome for pickling. So let's get out there and get some stuff. Starting with the green beans first, I mean, they look awesome. I mean, does it get any better than this? They're just so, it's delicious, absolutely delicious. So we're gonna pick a handful of these. And just taking a quick break, it's like gold. I mean, look at all this. This is awesome. I mean, I'm only probably a third of the way through and there's so many more beans to pick. It's just incredible. I really don't know what else to say. Like, I have 2 gallons of green beans and my dad told me that you should get 2 harvests of green beans. I guess we'll see if that's true here in a couple of weeks. But I'm not going to pickle all of these. Obviously, there's a lot left over to do with other recipes. Now, for the beets, I'm going to go see if some are popping out of the soil. And I absolutely love beets. Totally an underrated vegetable, if you ask me. And they're so good for you. And also the greens. Now, you can cut this up and put in salads, or you can cook it down. What I like to do is just treat it like Swiss chard. Just eating the leaf is so good. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it. It's amazing. Let's go see if we have some carrots. And I've got 1 carrot. And honestly, this guy should have probably stayed in there even a little bit longer. That's okay. I've got more carrots in there that we can pickle up. And now that I'm done picking, honestly, there's one thing my mom said in the garden video that makes complete sense.
And I think he's going to realize what hard work it is, but also it's really rewarding when you take that first bite out of a fresh vegetable. And I like the idea of not putting any chemicals on it either. That's one of my things too.
Could not have said that better myself. Let's get in the kitchen, rinse everything up, and start pickling. So what I usually do for this is I fill up a couple large tubs full of really cold water. Then I add the vegetables into each, move them around to get any unwanted dirt or anything on there. Again, and I keep them separate too. 1 for beets, 1 for carrots, 1 for the green beans. And then I drain them in a colander and give them 1 final rinse just to make sure everything is completely good to go. Again, this is just incredible. I'm just blown away at the produce, the green beans, the beets, even the 1 carrot. Like, this is incredible. But the first thing we need to do is prepare our jars. Now, you can hand wash these first with hot soap and water, or you can run them in the dishwasher, which is what I've always done. And I'm going to be using a 16-ounce jar. I've got a wide mouth and a regular mouth top. So what I do is add all the jars to the dishwasher, and I even put the lids and the seal top in there as well, and just run the cycle on normal wash. Once it's done, take them out, and then I completely let them dry to room temperature until I use them up. Now that the jars are clean, and this may be a little redundant, what my mom does is she actually boils them even after cleaning them to make sure they're completely sterilized. And we all know what happened the last time I didn't listen to my mom.
How about, does Billy listen to his parents? No. We told them, do not put the grass in last year, but does he listen to us? No.
So I'm going to go ahead and take her advice and do that. Find the largest pot you have, fill it up about 3/4 of the way with water, crank the heat on to high, bring it to a rolling boil. I know it's hard to see here because there is so much steam. And then what I do is add 1 jar at a time, making sure it fills with water before I go to the next one. I also, again, add the lids and the seals on there. And then what you want to do is just boil it for 2 whole minutes. You'll be good to go at that point. I, again, take them out, dry them completely until I use them. All right, it's finally time to start pickling. Now, the first thing we're going to get started with is the beets because we actually need to cook these ahead of time. So, of course, what we want to do is trim away the greens, but don't you dare throw away the greens. Like I said when I was out in the garden, they are fantastic, put in salads or even cooked down. Think of it like Swiss chard, just like I said. All right, to prepare them really quick, what we're going to do is just cut off that root end. Just continue to remove the stem end from the beets. Then what I do is place them in a pan or a rondeau pot, whatever you have, put them cut side down, add in 1 cup of cold water. Now place on a lid or even cover it with aluminum foil, either or. Put in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's going to take about 60 minutes for these to cook.
Now, Comies, this is actually great because while the beets are cooking, I think we can crank out like 3 pickling recipes just during that 1 hour period. That's how easy it is to do. We're gonna start off with some cauliflower.
So I've got 1 head of cauliflower here. We need to remove that root stem, and so cutting down and at an angle, just slice around and then it will simply pull up. Then what I do is break down the cauliflower into smaller pieces. I'm probably only going to use about half this amount. We only need about 2 cups per pint of vegetables. I'm also going to cut each little stem down even more and then break it up until I have nice bite-sized pieces. It should look exactly like this. Absolutely perfect. Then what I'm going to do is add about 1/3 of it into 1 pint. Then I'm going to add in some sliced yellow onions, a few sliced red bell peppers, add on more ingredients, and do that until it is completely at the top. Sometimes I use a butter knife to shove some of the ingredients to the bottom to make sure it's all in there.
All right, now for making the pickling brine, what we're gonna do is add in 2 cups of water, followed up with 2 cups of white distilled vinegar, a tablespoon of salt, that's salt there, sorry, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 2 teaspoons of mustard seed, and 1 teaspoon of black peppercorns.
We are going right over to that cooktop. We want to put it on there, crank the heat up to high, bring it to a rolling boil, but more importantly, make sure all the salt and the sugar have completely dissolved into the mixture before we remove it from the heat.
All right, totally forgot to add something into this, and that's garlic cloves. So real quick, last second, I'm just gonna shove 2 garlic cloves in each of these little mason jars here. And then to pour everything in, you can use a ladle. I like to use one of these little just measuring cups. Just evenly distribute the brine between both. And then at the end, when the spices are at the bottom, we'll go ahead and pack them in there in each one evenly as well.
What I do is grab some of those peppercorns and mustard seeds at the bottom and put them in there, and then use a spoon or a knife to work them all the way down at the bottom. Again, it's just about infusing the whole jar full of all the flavors. Then we let it cool completely to room temperature, which takes about 2 hours before we put a seal on it, screw on the lid nice and tight. Then we just pop it in the refrigerator to cool, but also we want to wait a certain amount of time before they're good to eat.
A couple of really quick things. Just like every single vegetable that I'm going to pickle today, they have about a 4 to 6 week shelf life in the refrigerator, and the flavor gets more intense with time. So while they are good to eat after just 24 hours, they're gonna be even more flavorful after 1 week. Okay, time for some green beans. All right, now if you remember from my garden video, we planted a couple different types of green beans, a bush bean and a regular green bean. You can see that the bush bean's a little bit flatter, the green bean's a little bit more round. Both of these are gonna be awesome for pickling. Really, all we need to do is trim up that stem end and start stuffing in jars.
Now you've seen me do this before, but I usually line up 5, 6, or 7 in a row on that stem end and then just give them a slice. The other way is just simply by snapping off the end. Now for the bush beans, you want to pinch and pull because that string is going to pull right out of there. It's very chewy. You want to make sure that it's completely out before we use them. Now, I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to put those garlic cloves at the bottom, make it nice and easy on myself. And I'm going to stuff it with as many green beans as I can possibly fit in to each jar. Now, I'm going to add in 2 sprigs of fresh dill for some nice flavor. Press it down in there.
Okay, for this brining liquid, we're actually gonna back off by about a 1/2 cup of each. So we're gonna do 1.5 cups of water and 1.5 cups of distilled white vinegar. I just had about a cup left over from the other ones. We obviously don't need that much for these 2 pints. Next, 1 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes and 1 tablespoon of salt. No sugar this time. Back to the cooktop.
Same exact procedure. Crank the heat on a high, bring it to a rolling boil. Make sure in this case that the salt is completely dissolved in before taking it off the heat.
And then we do the exact same thing that we did with the cauliflower. I'm gonna use a liquid tempered measuring cup. You can use a ladle, of course, and we just evenly distribute it between both pints of green beans. Now, the one thing that's super cool about pickling is no matter what the brine that I'm going to use, I'm gonna try to do a different recipe for each 5 things that I'm going to do. You can intertwine it. You can use this one
in the cauliflower, or maybe in the beets. You can use the cauliflower brine in the green beans. It is totally up to you. Have some fun with this. Get creative. Make sure these flavors mix with what you like. So continue to fill it up as much as you can. I've got some crushed red pepper flakes that I want to add in there, get all those flavors infused. Same sort of deal. Cool it to room temperature, about 2 hours. Put the seal on there, going in the refrigerator until cool. Remember, wait 24 hours at least before you start eating them. Totally lied. I was only able to get through 2 in the time that the beets finished cooking. Let's have a look. Awesome. They are totally cooked. I'm all fogged up here. What we're gonna do is just transfer the beets right out of the pan and just place them on a plate. We want them to cool to about room temperature to make them easier to handle. So again, just load them up on the plate and put them to the side somewhere. It's only gonna take about 30 minutes for these to completely cool down. Yeah, so maybe I didn't lie. I think I can actually prepare these carrots in the amount of time it's going to take for these beets to cool down. We need to peel them, and then you can cut them in whatever way you want. If you want to slice them, great. I'm going to cut them into spears. Sorry to interrupt, but this is totally the Bugs Bunny carrot. I mean, come on, that's perfect, right? Once they're peeled, we're going to line up that stem end and then just simply trim it off. Then again, I said I was cutting it into spears, so after you slice it in half, slice it one more time. We're going to, again, put the garlic cloves at the bottom, make it easy, then shove it full of all those carrot spears. I've put in 2 sprigs of fresh thyme, and then I sliced up some Fresno peppers, no seeds. I don't want it too spicy. We're also going to push those in there using a little knife. Following that same amount of brine for the green beans, we're going to add in 1.5 cups of water, followed up with 1.5 cups of white distilled vinegar, 1 teaspoon of mustard seed, 1 tablespoon of salt, and then 1.5 tablespoons of sugar to help offset some of those Fresno peppers. Back to the cooktop. I'm on repeat here. Bring that heat up to high. Make sure it's at a rolling boil and everything's dissolved in it before you remove it. Then pour it right over the top of our carrots. Fill it up as much as you possibly can. This goes for all the vegetables here. Then again, mix in everything. Wait till it's cool. Put the top on it. Then place it right in the refrigerator. You know the routine. All right, let's just say you don't want these to be in the refrigerator for 4 to 6 weeks. No, you want these to last much longer. Well, we can these. I still have a large pot of boiling water. Here's what we do. I've got that large pot of boiling water here. We're gonna add a rack to the bottom. You do this to protect the jar so that they're not bouncing up and down and maybe causing it to crack. So make sure a rack is in there. Now, what I was told is to put a knife in there and move it around. Make sure there's no air bubbles in there. That will cause everything in there to spoil. Once that's done, put the lid on, screw it decently tight, not horribly. You want to make sure there's enough room for pressure to build up and that the lid or seal does not crack. Now what we're going to do is drop it in there. We want to boil this or process it, as it's called, for 10 total minutes. And you'll definitely hear a pop when you know it's sealed. And while the carrots are in there, I just want to say you can do this exact same canning process for all of the vegetables that I am pickling today to help extend the shelf life of each of these things. They do need to sit for at least 2 to 3 weeks to allow that fermentation to build up before you can crack them open, but they will last up to 6 months on the shelf, which is just awesome. Going back over and having a look, I've got these special little tongs. Regular tongs are fine. Just remove the jar out of the hot water. I'm going to let it sit to room temperature, which is going to take about 8 to 12 hours. See, when you push on it there too, on the top, it doesn't make a sound. It's nice and firm. We know that these are sealed perfectly. All right, finally for the beets, they are cool enough to the touch. We can now peel them. Now, an easy way to do this, you're going to want gloves because guess what? Your hands are going to be bright purple if not. But look how easy they peel off after you roast them. That's why we do this ahead of time, all right? Cook them, peel them. If you don't have gloves, okay, no worries. Another great way to do it is by using a paper towel. Just come in here and press it through, and it will pull it off as well. No problem. Just continue to remove the skin from all the beets, whether you're using your hands or the gloves, and then to cut them. You can slice them thick. What I like to do is cut them into little wedges. I think what that does is just makes it a little bit easier to eat. And again, I'm not going to use all of these beets. For every single vegetable that I'm pickling, you need 4 cups total. Again, I can't say it enough. 2 cups fill up 1 pint. All right, now add as much of that goodness in there as possible. No garlic cloves for this recipe. Fill it to the top. And repeat the cycle for the liquid portion of the brine. 1.5 cups of water, 1.5 cups of distilled white vinegar. We're going 3 tablespoons of sugar this time for a little more sweetness, 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of mustard seed, and 1 teaspoon of peppercorns. Onto the burner. Broken record here. Put the pot on high heat, bring it to a rolling boil, make sure it's completely dissolved before removing it. All right, we do the exact same process, except I'm going to try something a little bit different here. I'm just going to transfer everything over to my 1 quart pour here. And I'm just going to evenly distribute it in each one and add any other goodness in there that it may need. And okay, I've got a bonus pickling recipe. It is so easy, requires no heat, minimal prep. Give me 45 seconds. I promise you will not regret it. Here we go. 1 large red onion, slice off the ends, remove that outside peel. Slice it however you want. I'm gonna do it thinly on a mandolin so I have nice rings. Jam up to each of those pint glasses, fill it all the way to the top. Now for the brine, we are starting off with 1.5 cups water. We are going to add in 1.5 cups of red wine vinegar, a 1/3 cup of sugar, and 1 tablespoon of sea salt. Whisk it until it's combined. Then what we do is just pour it over the onions as much as we can, completely covering them. Then these are actually ready to go in 60 minutes. Remember, the brine is already cool. So put a lid on it, put it in the refrigerator, and you'll be good to go in 1 hour. So much goodness and flavor in each of these. And remember, you can mix and match the brines with the vegetables, up to you. But it will always go back to these fundamental cooking techniques, like making sure that you cool it to room temperature before you put it in the refrigerator, giving it at least 24 hours to get some flavor incorporated into them. If you're canning them, following my step-by-step procedures to make sure it's safe. I'm telling you right now, you do all these things will absolutely elevate your everyday cooking, and that's what I'm all about. And I'm telling you, if you love pickling or just getting into it, you have to check out my kosher dill and bread and butter pickles. They are incredible. I've got an awesome video. I'll see you on there.